5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So the soldier says to Colonel Archer, I feel like lucky people don't get devoured by indestructible microbes. I want to die like those coaches who had their heads exploded by a pass from cannonballs.
Dude, when they say, "Oh, you're lucky to have," you got hit by lightning. You're lucky to have survived, or you're so lucky.
Yeah.
No, dude, that ain't fucking lucky.
Welcome to the Scafacci verse.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Scafacci verse. We are here, dude. I'm so excited to get to today's guest because this is a guy I want to talk to. He's like a legend in EA Sports College Football. So first, hey, I'm Alan Gigax.
I'm Anthony Scafacci.
All right, and we are the Scafacci verse podcast. And before we get to the guest, I want to remind you guys, give a like, follow, share, subscribe, all that stuff, all the regular podcast things.
Yep.
But most of all, I want to get to it.
Hey, well, hold on, man. Before we
go
get to
ahead.
it, we got to do just the tip.
Yeah,
right?
let's get that over with.
Let's quick knock it out so we can get to this, okay?
So today's Just the Tip sponsor is Jelly's Snot Knockin' Barbecue, home of the pregame victory dessert, 17 locations nationwide. And the tip this time is just listen to the podcast.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, be here, be ready, because we have a great guest, and we're going to get to him right now.
Who is he?
All right. Now, with no further ado, I introduce Matt Brown of Extra Points. Matt Brown, just to give a little context, you guys may remember last year when the game was coming out after this 10-year hiatus, and we started getting all this information because some goddamn hero was out there filing freedom of information requests to figure out what all these colleges were providing to EA. That hero was Matt Brown.
All right, well-
Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, fellas. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Especially on short notice. That was great. That was nice of you. All right.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to go over is your website, Extra Points. So tell us a little bit about your website, what you do there. I know the tagline on the podcast says the website, learn how college sports really works. Extra Points covers the business, policy, and off the field stories changing college sports. So tell us what you bring to that website.
You bet. I'm a longtime college sports reporter. I've spent part of my career being the kind of reporter that goes to games and writes about who's going to win and who's going to play quarterback next year and on the field things. And I'm still interested in that stuff. But there's a ton of other people also writing about those things. And there's not nearly as many people that are writing about legal policy, public policy, finance, business, education, so many of these other things that are especially relevant to college athletics now, because they're shaping what conference people are going to be in, who's going to be in Division I versus Division III in 3 years, who has the resources to compete at a high level, both on campus and in Washington, D.C. And so that is what I spend every day on. I publish 4 days a week. I'm covering everything from the policy issues that impact P4 schools all the way down to Division III. And kind of fell into video game reporting by accident. So it's been kind of this funny thing here to see my audience of some people that are like ADs all over Florida and Texas and Ohio, and people that work for Adidas and Under Armour and Electronic Arts, and then hundreds of people that are like, I don't care about any of that stuff, man. Just I'm here for the video games, and so we try to serve both those folks.
That is awesome. So obviously, as you say, this has become more important especially since NIL has really changed the face of college football. And that's really what allowed the video game to come back. That NIL deal where players are now getting paid for their likeness. But we saw like last year, there was a holdout it was Arch Manning, right?
Yeah, Archie Manning.
Archie Manning, who didn't want to play or he wasn't going to be in the game, and then EA made a deal with him. Do we have potential holdouts like that coming into this year's version of the game?
It would really surprise me, and it would surprise me for two reasons. One is that the amount of money available to athletes for this year's release is going to be significantly more than last year. The base contract for last year's game was, we'll pay you $600 and we'll give you a copy of the game.
Right.
And that number was based in part on the fact that EA didn't really know how commercially successful this thing was going to be.
Hell, nobody knew that.
So I know that's surprising to some people, right? But they're extrapolating the numbers from how this sold 2023 and 2013, 2014, what the numbers look like for Madden, what the numbers look like for NHL, and they were kind of benchmarking this game to sell, not super dissimilar to a hockey game. Instead, it just obliterates every possible projection,
right. Best
not just
selling...
internally, but like within Wall Street. And then EA comes back and says, okay, now it's $1,500.
Nice.
And I copied the game. But there's also another company that is seeking to get into the licensing space beyond the incumbent, which is One Team Partners.
Okay.
And they're going to schools and saying, I will buy your future rights for $1,500 too. So next year, players can sign both those contracts, so you can make $3,000.
Oh, that's cool.
Instead of just $600.
Right.
It's difficult for me to imagine given how emotionally important it was for so many people to be in this game, that $3,000 would not be enough to make them want to participate, given some of the other perks that come along with being part of the game.
Right. But what about the really high-profile players? Like, we want to talk to you about the quarterback from Tennessee, who.
Nico Lamaliva, or whatever his name is, who yesterday a story came out that there was, I don't know if it's rumor or if it's fact, that him and a few other players leading up to the Tennessee playoff game were going to hold out. It was like in the semifinal game. They were going to try to hold out and hold the TV up for more money to even take the field. Did you hear anything about that?
No, I mean, I've heard rumors about that. I honestly don't believe them. We've had rumors of athletes wanting to sit out in front of postseason games for football and basketball for a couple of years. For anybody that has aspirations of playing in the NFL, which Nico does, as do many of the skill position players and anybody in the SEC, doing that would nuke your ability to be an attractive player.
It's going to be an integrity issue.
Oh, yeah.
And a
Now,
it's going to be kind of bad.
Real quick, fellas. Now, we're talking about the video game. Remember that there's two different contracts here, right? There's the base contract, which is sent out to everybody. That's to be in the game.
That's the $1,500.
Yeah, this year it's $1,500 and then $3,000 if you sign both contracts.
Right.
But if you're Jeremiah Smith or Caleb Downs or somebody who's going to be a Heisman candidate, you're getting a separate deal.
Okay.
And EA did 150 plus of these deals last year, including to some people who don't even play college football, to serve as brand ambassadors to promote the game on social media. And this is exact same structure they use for Madden that 2K Take-Two Studios does for 2K. And so they might say, "Hey, Caleb," this is a hypothetical here.
Sure.
Right? I'm not giving the actual numbers. "Hey, Caleb Downs, safety for the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll give you $1,500 to be in the game and $25,000 to put, reference the game 4 times on Instagram in June." And that is going to, line up maybe a little bit more to the value that he might bring in there. So you add both of those things, it would shock me if someone said, this is not enough money.
This is exactly like the NIL deals that you get on Road to Glory.
Yeah, exactly.
If you mention us, you'll get a +2 to your speed.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what about, in addition to players, the schools get royalties from this game as well, right?
They do. The way that the existing contract is set up is that all of the institutions, and this year, I should know this number off the top of my head, I think it's going to be 136 because Delaware and Missouri State will be a part of the game and were not last year. So those schools share a pile of money that is, I want to say 15% of total base copies. So they don't get a royalty on the DLC or the Ultimate Team revenue, but just like the sales of the game. And it's not a straight split for everybody. You're broken into 4 tiers, depending on how often you finished in the AP Top 25 over a 10-year period.
Oh, poor New Mexico
like Ohio State, Michigan, Texas. Yeah. It's funny because then you might have a school like Nebraska that is a big brand and that people care about, but they've sucked the last decade. So they get the same revenue share as like
Buffalo.
Florida International.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But
the dirty little secret is it's really not that much money. And it's something that many schools that I've talked to are frustrated with, but EA has all the leverage.
Sure. Right. So I've heard you talk about there are benefits, though, for smaller schools. Like in another podcast, I heard you specifically talk about Kennesaw State, where because they're new to the game, they're getting all this exposure and their Google searches went up, their social profile went up because people are suddenly interested in them from the game.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is trying to advertise their institution, and that's part of why you play FBS football. It's part of why you participate in Division One, so you can get on cable television and have those commercials. I don't know about you guys. Like when I grew up in kind of rural Ohio, and when I was playing the PlayStation 2 versions of this game, some of the early ones had FCS teams. I didn't know anybody in my life that went to Florida A&M or
Sure,
that
yeah.
went to Morgan State. Like HBCUs, I know there's one in Ohio, but it's not really a thing in that part of the Midwest. I literally learned those institutions existed through this video game.
100%.
And and that was kind of the catalyst to get me to be curious about them in other capacities. Like I don't think you're going to find many examples of some cat in Boise saying I'm going to go to Kennesaw State because I played them in the game. But the hope is that maybe you might have some teenagers in Dallas who recognize some of these schools when they start sending them letters.
Right.
And that changes some things because you don't need that to happen very often to make up a significant amount of tuition.
Well, and sure, especially like if a small school gets like a gem of a player that would have otherwise maybe went somewhere else, but he goes to like a smaller school because he's going to get more playing time, or he's going to be the star of the program, the face of the program, that could raise that individual's profile a lot, and make him much more attractive. I mean, Travis Hunter was kind of a good example of that when he went to, I think it was like Jacksonville State or something like that.
Jackson State.
Jackson
There you
State,
go.
yeah.
FCS,
He was
yeah.
like, I think he was the #1 rated prospect that year coming out of high school.
Okay.
And he goes and signs with this tiny little school to
Well,
go play with Prime.
Yeah,
And
right.
but it raised his profile massively, along with that school massively.
So in 2025, there's like a similar player where I very loosely follow college football, but there's a player on
Nick Harper. You're
yeah,
talking about
Nick Harper, exactly, who in the game is this absolute monster. And I know him because in the game, 99 speed, 99 acceleration.
Yeah.
And so there must be players like that the game, I mean, the ratings in the game affect their real life profile.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, maybe from some marketability, I don't think if you got a 97 speed and you're playing right now for Troy, that's going to make it more likely that you get some
An
transfer
NIL
portal
or
interest
something,
next
yeah.
year.
Okay, that's fair,
The
that's fair.
scouting mechanisms among the major schools are so sophisticated. But yes, like in terms of your increasing your public awareness,
Yeah,
and
there
maybe
you
some
go.
other goals. Yeah, being in the game is very important. You're reaching particularly a younger generation of people that are not watching as much cable television. They might not even watch many cool games on TV, but they participate in the video game, and that's meaningful to a lot of the players.
Right. I can tell you in my own personal life, when I was in high school, we had a guy from our school who went to Wyoming and was like the third string quarterback at Wyoming. But in that year's version of the game, they didn't have player licenses, so he was just like number 12. But we knew, oh my God, that's him. That's Frank in the game. And he got the nickname PlayStation because we were all so excited. Like, oh my God, he's really there. So yeah, it's so cool for the players. So let me ask you about the leaks for this year. We know that schools are being asked to provide more. So what sort of new content should we look for in this year's game that you're seeing?
So, one thing I want to be careful about, and I definitely learned my lesson reporting on this last year,
All right.
is that there's a big difference between EA asks a school for something, school provides something, that thing automatically goes in the game.
Fair.
So I can't tell you exactly what I know is going to be in next
Sure.
year's game.
Okay.
There were things that EA wanted to include in College Football 25 that got left on the cutting room floor pretty close to release. But I can tell you that they are asking for different things. One as an example, one bit of feedback that I know the company got, and I certainly got, even though I don't make the goddamn game.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But people were definitely telling me is that none of the marching band uniforms are accurate. And that's true.
Oh.
A guy at EA told me that all of the marching band uniforms were procedurally generated based on the primary, secondary, and alternate colors of the
yeah.
school's uniform. So if you care about what these things look like, that's
Right.
not going to be real life. So now they're going to the schools and saying, send us pictures of your marching band uniform.
Right. And that may or
send
may
us
not make it into the game. Okay.
Yeah, so and we can see if we can acquire those licenses, if we can make that more realistic. There was a lot more questions asked about pre-game and during game presentation. Not just audio that's being played, but what is your mascot doing? Where are people standing in the game here in the stadium? and there's more like I guess bandwidth to make these kind of changes here, because what I don't think people realize how extraordinarily complicated, time-consuming, and expensive it is to create and render stadiums.
Oh, it's got to be
some
insane.
updates for stadiums last year, but I had multiple developers on this game tell me, like, honest to God, Matt, like that was the single biggest, most difficult thing, and we had to do 134 of them in 1 year. This year we have to do 4.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so that means that we have some time that we can go back and add other details or things to the places. I would also say I would be surprised if there were not substantially more mascots in this game. All the mascots were not in last year's release. I know part of that was just about like time to do the 3D rendering and animation. There's a lot more time to do that now.
Right. And again, like you say, time that they're not having to devote to these stadiums. And I think we've seen some of the early leaks that allegedly there's going to be mascot mode.
Yeah, like mascot mode,
game.
and potentially some open world Road to Glory, which seems like that would be massively expensive to do. That is to suddenly turn Road to Glory into like GTA 6.
Well, but these are now these are from sources not as reputable as Matt.
I mean, take it with a grain of salt,
Yeah. So here's what I'll say about that. I would not bet my mortgage. I would not assign my name and my credibility to any leak that has come out from the development of this game that has not come from me or has not come from a full-time games journalist. And I say that like that has a name attached to it. And I say that not because I think I'm some paragon of journalistic perfection or that I don't mess up sometimes or anything. But the stuff that you get from somebody's cousin that works at Nintendo on Reddit or whatever, and you can't, and it goes through a game of telephone. All this, like almost all the stuff that I shared last year, I could either point to a receipt and say, "Here's the PDF," like here's the email chain, or it's because I literally called somebody with an EA.com email address who works on the game and said, "Is this true or not?" I can tell you, there's a lot fewer leaks or reports coming out because these guys in Florida got hip to what I was doing, and they stopped sending out as many stuff via email.
Right.
And they got their lawyers buttoned up. And then also when I would call them, what people were able to really talk about declined a little bit. So I for my money, I cannot tell you with certainty that there's mascot mode next year. I am very confident that there will be more mascots. I know where the open world Road to Glory thing is coming from. That came from an investor presentation talking about Madden last year. I don't know if that's finished or not yet. I don't know if that's something that's going to be specific to Madden or not yet. That a focus on open world atmosphere was not something that has come up in the conversations I have had with developers. That doesn't mean that it's not happening, but that has not been the thing that people have been sharing with me.
Okay. Well, there you go. And so, listeners, if you want this kind of content, if you want this information from reliable source,
you got to sneak into EA's headquarters wearing a fucking mask and then get in there.
Or you can go to Matt's website, Extra Points MB, as in Matt Brown, extrapointsmb.com. You get that stuff there. He has a whole section devoted to college football, EA college football, and it's an awesome resource, guys.
So Matt, you look pretty young, man. So how long ago did you start playing EA Sports College Football? Like what?
Oh, shoot.
You all right?
Well, actually, I'll show you. Give me one second.
Okay. Oh, he's going to get a prop.
All right.
So while he's doing that, we'll talk about our own credential because we go back
to the Bill Walsh
Here
days.
it comes. Yeah.
So
So Matt,
I just turned 38.
Okay.
And I started with this bad boy.
Oh yeah,
there it is,
Genesis.
Bill Walsh. Yeah, the same as us.
I've got the OG. Now, I mean, that box. I don't have a Sega Genesis anymore. I picked this up at a yard sale a couple of years ago. I was most into it at the tail end of the PlayStation 1 era into the PlayStation 2 era. I probably lost several tenths of a GPA point in college.
Oh yeah,
because, well, as I think most people did around my age.
Oh yeah, so many late nights and the game back then, like that was before it was even licensed, and so like Florida State was Tallahassee,
yeah,
and Stanford was Palo Alto,
yeah, I
and
think
stuff like
UCLA
that.
might have been Los Angeles, or maybe that was the Trojans. I mean, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, UCLA was Westwood.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the game has come a
be,
long way since then. Yep. And even before that, there was this early license game, All-American College Football. And I've heard you talk about that on another podcast, that was like the early...
I've mentioned this one. I never had it.
Okay.
And you can play it for free if you go to the Internet Archive. There's like this gigantic repository of DOS games. But I want to say this came out in like 1990, maybe, and it was straight for PC. It ran on the MS-DOS ecosystem, and it was licensed, and it was essentially a football simulator because part of the reason that we didn't have Madden, or we didn't have licensed or big football games really before 1994 was none of the hardware was sophisticated enough to do 11-on-11 football.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
And if those of you who had a 486DX, 100 megahertz processor DOS computer like I did, you couldn't animate 22 people. So you're picking plays and you're doing a little bit of football, but it's the GAT game was closer to Football Manager than anything that you guys might understand here.
Well, king of clever segues here. Speaking of Football Manager, a lot of us, Anthony and I in particular, and many of our listeners, they love the management aspect of these college football games, of the dynasty mode, getting in depth, seeing what it's like to recruit, things like that. Matt, you have a product on your website. You have a game where you get to be the athletic director. Tell us about that. Yeah,
this actually, I'll tell you, it started as a joke.
Okay.
Because
so did this podcast.
And so did lots of good ideas, right?
Right.
Like I figured here, I don't have an engineering background or anything, but I think like a lot of mid-career journalists, a couple of years ago I was thinking, if I got better at Python, that would probably help me with some of the data analysis that I do on the financial side of writing about college sports. And for a lot of people that are learning programming languages, one of the first things you end up doing is making a game to see if you're understanding how to create loops, if you're understanding the syntax correctly. So I made a very, very simple game, something I think any high school student could do, called Athletic Director Simulator, where you would navigate different, somewhat realistic scenarios that an AD might actually face. And the original game was a joke. Like the way that you won was by telling your athletic department to buy a lot of subscriptions to Matt Brown's Extra Points.
That's a win, man.
Yeah,
it's a well played.
We all win that
right?
way.
Yeah, you did that. You lost if you hired like Houston Nutt. Like it was this joke thing. And when they put it out though, because a bunch of ADs read Extra Points.
Sure.
The feedback we got was this was fun. You should work on this. You should make this a real game. And so we did. I worked with another developer. I wrote all the pseudocode, and we turned it into something that wasn't a joke. It's not special. It's not super sophisticated. It's a gigantic choose your own adventure. But we had a bunch of sitting ADs consult on it and offer suggestions about realistic scenarios that you would face, whether you're at Stetson or North Florida or UCF or Florida or Alabama or anybody else. And so users get a chance to see how you would respond and how to juggle fundraising and your political standing and your Director's Cup ranking and can you get promoted or not. And it's mostly used in schools.
Okay.
Which is ironic, right? We have a bunch of universities that have sports management majors that use my stuff as a textbook, even if I wouldn't have gotten in as like a 17-year-old.
Cool.
Hopefully you're getting royalties off of that.
Well, we charge it very little amount of money for it because we want to make it affordable relative to a textbook. But yeah, have I talked to EA about, guys, I'll sell you this pretty cheap.
Right.
Or let's get me a consulting contract to build something like this.
Yeah, now we're talking.
Yeah, you could be like the revamp guys. So in the big gap in between 14 and 25, there was college football revamped. Are you familiar with this?
Sure. And last time I was in Orlando, I met a couple of those guys who work on the game now. They were walking me through some of the animation stuff that they did.
Dude, that's so cool. Yeah, to see people who are just doing this.
Yeah, they were just purely fans, and they were like the drought was killing them, and so they just started making it on their own, which was amazing.
What do those guys tell you about their experience?
Yeah, I want to say, I think one of the gentlemen I talked to used to be a reporter. He did like broadcast journalism in Missouri. There was a fella who used to be a cop. There were a couple of people that had, were all self-taught, had nothing to do with computer science. And there's a lot of things you could say about EA. There's some things obviously that are frustrating to many people, listening to this. But I think one thing they do that's pretty admirable is they're willing to hire people from non-traditional backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
If they are curious, if they're problem solvers, if they really care about the product, because you can teach somebody how to code.
Sure.
You can teach somebody how to do Q&A. You can't teach them to live and breathe this franchise, which is what a lot of those revamped guys did. I think it's a cool story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Dude.
honestly like kind of like a championship level story because
Oh, right.
because we were playing just regular old college 14.
Yeah, dude,
and then
for a
revamped
decade.
came along and it was like, oh my
Right,
god,
it made it fresh again.
Yeah,
It
look
got
at
those
what they
uniforms.
can do,
Dude.
And it really started I think it started revamped. I think was the stepping stone to 25. Like
Well,
it was
it's
the
cer-
major like.
It certainly
building
kept
block.
people interested,
Yeah.
right? The people who were hardcore into the game, that was a way to keep it fresh.
Sure.
We went the other direction. We kept playing the same base game and then built nonsense stories around our dynasties and Road
Yeah.
to Glories. Yep.
Thousands of people did. Like
Yeah.
it's basically, became Dungeons and Dragons for a different kind of
Yeah.
Yeah,
person.
pretty
But instead
much.
of being a paladin, you're
Right.
being a quarterback at UCF.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So speaking of universities, so we know that you graduated from the Ohio State University. So yep, you got the shirt there. So when you are playing college football, do you use Ohio State?
Pretty rarely.
Okay.
And I mean that's just because like to do a dynasty with Ohio State is to play on toddler mode.
Sure,
Right?
yeah.
Right.
My daughter's 10. If she wanted to do that, great. But like it's not really a challenge unless you wanted to say I'm going to start as a coordinator and then do my next job at Akron.
Right.
If I'm playing dynasty mode, I generally pick a MAC school.
Yeah,
Yeah, there we
Maction,
go.
hot Maction, yeah.
Well, right. Like I grew up not that far from Ohio University. I know just as many people at Kent than I do at Ohio State. So like that feels more realistic. The other thing that I know I might get yelled at for this, but while I do play Dynasty mode, like I played a non-trivial amount of Ultimate Team last year, just because I could get through a game really quickly.
Yeah, that's fair.
And if I'm looking at my schedule, because in this gig, I might be working really late, but I might have 90 minutes free at 1 o'clock. My kids are at school. I'm like, okay, I can
Right.
knock out a couple of games this
Dude,
way.
And the great thing about your job is that when your wife sees you playing video games, no, babe, I'm working.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is research.
Man, if I had $1 for every time I said that last year, I wouldn't need to charge for this newsletter.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you
and-
go. Yeah.
I tried
it was
that on
kinda
my
funny.
wife. It didn't work. So,
Yeah, when I got a copy of the game, and I think I got it maybe 4 or 5 days before everybody else, and I was doing a review for Polygon and had a couple of deadlines. Like I was playing it 10, 12 hours straight. In my head, I'm thinking,
Oh my
man,
God.
if I was 20, this would
Right.
be cool as hell.
Right.
I'm 37. And I don't want to play video games anymore. Like, once this came out to everybody, I went on vacation. I went to the mountains.
Right.
I know we got to get out of here really soon.
Yeah.
Matt's got to go, but I've got one question because it came up.
Go
that
for
you
it.
sponsored a bowl game.
Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't get to that.
And
Yeah, dude.
Just real quick, can
Yeah,
you
the
tell
Extra
our
Points
audience-
Bowl.
Yeah, about the Extra Points Bowl and how what madman kind of shit you were doing to think of doing this.
I would love to. So the Extra
Okay.
Points Bowl is also happening again this year.
Nice.
We signed a 2-year contract. I have one of these patches that we mail out here.
Oh,
to
look
our-
at that. That is
our
awesome.
subscribers. The game was played at the NFL Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton. It's the one that's 25,000
Right.
Yeah.
seats. It's
Yeah.
right next to Hall of Fame. And
so
it was
cool.
for Division III teams. So we had a team from the Ohio Athletic Conference and the President's Athletic Conference. Our game was Marietta against Westminster, a team from Southern Ohio, from a team just outside of Pittsburgh. Westminster won. It's part of a 2-game bowl series, and we got into this because we looked into sponsoring a Division I bowl game. And I can tell you, cheapest bowl game is the New Mexico Bowl, and ESPN's going to charge you about $450,000 if you want to be the headline there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I cannot justify that kind of money right now because I don't have it.
Yeah, you got to get a lot more
and-
people playing athletic director.
Yeah.
Right.
I need a lot
When
more
we get
people
the
to pay me
Scafacci
$9
versus
a month.
podcast bowl,
There
we
you
know
go,
we've
yeah.
made it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Barstool had a bowl game. Like we've had
Right.
media companies do it before. But I grew up in a D3 town in Ohio, and I knew some of the commissioners and some of the ADs for some of those leagues. And then when we found out that this was an opportunity, I'm like, well, this is the easiest marketing spend we'll ever make.
Nice, man.
It was not that much money. It was something that I would say it would be within the budget of a podcast. We
Nice.
had some
Okay.
other podcasts serve as like secondary sponsors.
Sure.
It was a great
$61
experience.
will get you a bowl game.
No, I'll tell you, The check I wrote had a comma in it.
Okay.
But it
Nice.
didn't have 2 commas in it.
All right.
Ah,
Like, it
dude.
was-
All
Hey
right.
man, look,
Yeah.
that's a flex, dude.
Dude, that is so amazing.
All right.
All right.
So-
no, wait. No.
Okay.
Just
Shit,
a
I know he's
tiny
gotta
bit more.
go,
I know
man.
we're on time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what was the experience like for you being at your bowl game?
I'll tell you, fellas, legitimately, it was one of the professional highlights of my career.
Dude.
And I'll explain why, right? Because I joke sometimes that what I do feels like the catastrophe beat. Because I'm constantly talking to ADs, commissioners, shoe executives, coaches, and they're all freaking out about everything that's happening in college sports. And then when I was at this game, I'll never forget, it was like the third quarter. The weather sucks, right? It's 27 degrees, it's cold, and most of the fans are in like the luxury boxes. They're like
Right.
they're like watching
Yeah,
inside.
that's football weather.
Yeah, it's football. Well, to the Midwestern.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I go over, and this big guy, 6'4", looks like he walked off the set of Sons of Anarchy, comes up to me, and he sees me in my bowl jacket, and he sees with the patch, and he's like, "Are you the extra points guy?" I'm like, I am. And he gives me this big hug, which I was not expecting. And he says, "I got to tell you, my son is a senior on one of these teams, and he got injured over the summer, and he didn't think he was going to get a chance to play his senior year. No one's redshirting in Division III,
Right.
No one, right? And all he wanted was one more bus ride, one more chance to play with his brothers. The team didn't make the D3 playoffs this year, but because of your game, and there's not very many Division III bowl games, he's able to extend the season enough to keep playing. And this is the only thing that he ever wanted here, and I'm just really thankful that you got that opportunity." So when you go down at the end of the field at the end of that game, none of these guys know who the hell I am, and that's fine. Like, and that doesn't matter. They didn't know what extra points was a month ago, but they're screaming and crying and cheering and holding the trophy and waving it up in the air, and that's what's important. And when you do that after you spent months and months talking about the NIL agents and antitrust lawsuits and Ted Cruz and all this other stuff, to be down on the field and see a couple of guys who are going to be accountants, not
Right.
football players, in 2 years, holding up a trophy and screaming with their buddies. How could you not be excited about that?
Oh, hell yeah.
Dude.
That was easily the best check I've written since starting this company.
That is so cool. So that's a great way to end a season and
absolutely.
a great way to wrap up this podcast. Guys, if you want to hear more from Matt Brown, if you want to stay up to date on all of this stuff, it's extrapointsmb.com. Subscribe to his newsletter. Get on the list. Check out everything he's doing. It's a great resource out there. And Matt, thank you so much for coming on
absolutely,
the podcast,
man. Thank you.
Yeah,
big
it's
time.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right. So let's you hit our sponsor. Are we getting?
Oh,
on? Or you
yeah,
gonna...
let's let him get out of here, and
Okay.
then we'll come back to do our sponsor.
All right, Matt. Thanks a lot for
All
coming
right.
back on, man, or coming on. We'll try.
Dude, that was fucking fantastic.
Yeah, dude. Matt he fucking lights out. Bro.
Yeah, Matt brought it. Dude, it shows like what a real actual person who does this shit.
Yeah.
Man, he's good at it.
Yeah,
He knows his stuff.
Yeah, he was. No, that was fantastic.
It is. It
But
was
hey,
good.
but do we have our sponsor?
We did. It's fitting that our strongest sponsor
Yeah.
comes through on this strongest episode,
Yeah.
or one of our strongest. I don't know, man. Like the Coach Raw episodes are pretty fucking strong
Yeah,
too.
it is.
Yeah.
Let's hope this one can catch it. You know.
Right. So this one is the He Held On Foundation.
Yep, salt of the
and
earth.
dude, we absolutely love them. Yep, they're doing the good work. And here we have another story of another lucky He Held On recipient. This is Cesar Ramirez of San Ysidro, California, fulfilled his bucket list on the brick-lined streets of Pamplona, Spain.
Oh my God.
Oh, do you know what happens in Pamplona, Spain?
I
You
might be
know
aware.
what's coming.
Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead.
Thanks to the tireless efforts of the He Held On Foundation and your generous financial support, Mr. Ramirez was flown to Spain to participate in the annual Running of the Bulls. Cesar chose the Plaza Consistorial, situated near the start of the historic event, as the location for his run. His walker was outfitted with the finest Wilson U.S. Open Extra Duty All-Court tennis balls, the finest money can buy. The Bulls were feisty that day, and as the cowards around him ran for cover, Mr. Ramirez stood his ground like a true hero.
Okay.
He took on no fewer than 3 bulls before the shouts of the crowd drew the Bulls further down the course. The tennis balls from his walker will be auctioned off later this month to raise funds that will help even more seniors live out their dreams.
What an amazing story.
Yeah.
This is.
We
yeah.
should all be so
Oh
lucky.
God, what a hero.
Yeah.
All
so
right,
that's it,
dude.
man. We did it.
Yeah, we did. All right. 4, Anthony Scafacci. 4, our guest, Matt Brown. For Alan Gigax, this has been a Balls Deep production of the Scafacciverse podcast. We are out.